He died at Heiser 44 a.m. No pulse, no breath. Time of death called. Everyone agreed. But the heart monitor didn't. It kept beeping, once every 10 seconds. Steady, soft, not enough to raise alarm, but enough to feel wrong. I'd been a night nurse for 26 years by then. You get used to machines acting weird. Loose wires, signal drift, static charges in dry winter air. But this wasn't that. The monitor showed a flat line, then a blip. Just one, then nothing again. I tapped the screen, nothing. I checked the leads on the patient's chest. Still, cold, already stiffening. The tech had left. Dr. Klein was on another floor. I was alone in ICU room 6 with a man who was dead, and a machine that didn't think so. I powered it off, waited, powered it back on, still beeping. It wasn't a full rhythm, just tiny irregular spikes, almost hesitant. I felt a chill, the kind you feel before a thunderstorm, or before someone walks into the room, even when no one does. The name on his chart was Frank DeLucci, 67, heart failure, admitted 3 days earlier with chest pain and blurred vision. No visitors, no family, just a wallet with a faded photo of someone, maybe a wife, maybe not. I wrote the final notes on his chart, covered his body, shut the monitor down again. This time, the beep stopped. I exhaled, felt stupid for feeling tense. Machines glitch, that's all, or so I told myself. 10 minutes later, I heard the beep again, but I hadn't turned it on, and this time, the machine wasn't even plugged in. It was sitting on standby power, unconnected to any patient. No leads, no input, but it beeped, clear as a whisper. I grabbed a tech from 2 rooms down, told him it must be some kind of capacitor issue. He frowned, unplugged it fully, held the power button for a reset. Still it beeped, every 10 seconds. He pulled it into the hallway. It didn't stop, until it passed room 4. Then it just went dead. No reboot, no signs of life, like someone had finally decided, enough. We tagged the machine for maintenance and stored it in the back. The next night, I worked the same shift. Frank's body had been picked up, bed cleaned, fresh linens. New patient wheeled in around 1:10 a.m. A younger guy, appendicitis. As I finished the vitals, I heard it again. Beep. I turned. Nothing there. Beep. I opened the cabinet. The monitor was still gone. Beep. It was coming from the wall panel. That's when I remembered something. A night 6 years ago. Different ward. Different patient. A man who'd coded, but asked for me by name before he did. I didn't know him. He shouldn't have known me. But when I got there, he smiled and said, "You were the one last time. You were with me." I didn't understand what he meant, but he died 30 minutes later.
And the room went cold. Colder than it had any reason to be. I shook off the memory. Too many night shifts, I told myself. Too many people dying when no one should. Still, when I opened Frank's file the next evening out of habit, something caught my eye. A red notation near the bottom. Prior code event, revived. Chaplain consult requested. That wasn't in the original notes. The timestamp was from 2014, 11 years ago. I wasn't working ICU then. I kept digging, found a scanned page, blurred handwriting, but readable. Patient reported seeing someone familiar during code event, mentioned a nurse from a prior admission who never spoke but stayed near the monitor. There was a sketch, crude, ballpoint pen. It was of a woman, short hair, shoulders turned slightly, head down. I stared at it for a long time. It looked like me, but that couldn't be. I wasn't working here in 2014. I started asking around. Some of the older staff remembered Frank, said he'd been in and out over the years, always at night, always unwell, never quite ready to die. One nurse said something I can't forget. He once told me the machines were keeping track, not of his heart, but of how many times he slipped away. Like it wasn't about surviving, but about how long he could delay what was waiting. I didn't sleep that morning. I called my sister, talked about nothing, listened to the hum of the fridge, the ticking of the wall clock. Beep. Not real, but it sounded real. And every time I closed my eyes, I saw the waveform again. Flatline, then a single blip, like a stubborn breath in a dead room. A few weeks later, I found out the maintenance team never picked up the monitor. It was missing, not logged, not found, gone. Until last week, I was assigned to the geriatric floor. Patient in room 208 coded, died before we could stabilize. I stepped out to call the family. When I returned, the new tech looked pale. He pointed to the monitor. It wasn't the one we installed. It was an older model, tagged for decommissioning. And it beeped every 10 seconds. I pulled the sticker off the back, faintly visible beneath. Asset ID 6-ICU-FD. FD, Frank DeLucci. I powered it off. This time it stayed off. But as I turned to leave, the screen flickered just once, then showed a number, 244. Not the time, not the code, just a timestamp burned into its memory. Maybe it's a glitch. Maybe it's my mind fraying after decades of night shifts. But I haven't worked ICU since. I told my supervisor I'd take any floor, any wing, just not room 6. Because every so often, on the central console where they list monitor statuses, one screen will light up with a single patient ID, even when all the beds are empty. F-DeLucci. Status, monitoring. Signal, intermittent. Beep, beep, beep.
Welcome everyone to Nightmare Echoes. Before we start, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment. Tell us where you're from, then what time you're watching this. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin.
They told me the East Wing wasn't used anymore. Too old. Too far from the central stations. The elevator barely worked. But that night, we needed the room. ICU was full. Post-op, too. So they opened 6 East again, just for overflow. I got the call at 11:52 p.m. New admit. Just stabilize her overnight. No family, no code status. I remember standing in the elevator, watching the floor indicator blink sluggishly as it climbed. The hallway lights were on, but dim,
like they hadn't been changed in years. The floor smelled like it always did, dust, bleach, and something under that, like old linen left in a warm drawer. Room 6E03 had a bed, no working vitals monitor, no call button, just a worn-out phone and an analog clock that ticked way too loud. The patient's name was Mrs. Rosalie Henders, 84, dementia, admitted for observation after a fall. She didn't speak much, just looked at the ceiling. Sometimes she smiled. Other times she just muttered the same sentence over and over. He wheels past at midnight. The first time she said it, I thought she meant another patient, a memory maybe, delirium. But at 12:01 a.m., I heard it, the wheels, a soft, rhythmic squeak, far down the corridor. Not fast, just steady. I stepped out of her room, looked both ways. Nothing. Just the empty nurse's station and a vending machine with a flickering display. The sound stopped. I told myself it was the old pipes. This wing was built in the 70s, probably rust in the system. I went back in. Mrs. Henders was asleep. I did one last check, turned off the light, closed the door. But as I walked back toward the elevator, I heard it again. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Closer this time. Slower. Like the rubber wheels of an old hospital wheelchair, one that had lost its alignment. That subtle tilt to one side as it moves. I turned fast. Still nothing. But the sound, it kept going. Right behind me. I turned again. Still nothing. But I felt something this time. Air pressure shift. Like someone had just passed by too quickly. Or stopped just behind my shoulder. I took the stairs down. Didn't wait for the elevator. Back at the main station, I told Marcy about it. She laughed. You got the East Wing creeps. Everyone does their first time. It's just the vents. The next night, they put a second patient in the wing. Different room, 6E05. I did my rounds again. Quiet night. Until just after midnight. Both patients were asleep. I was walking between the rooms when I heard the squeak again. Only this time, it passed me. I froze. The sound didn't stop. It rolled past, slow, then stopped in front of 6E05. I stared hard into the dim hallway, and there it was, a wheelchair, one of the old steel frame models, the kind we haven't used in 15 years. It was facing the patient's room, just sitting there. I stepped closer. It was empty, dust on the armrests, but one of the wheels had a smear of something dark near the tread. Grease? Blood? I blinked, and it was gone. Just not there anymore. No sound, no movement. Just the hallway lights flickering once, then settling. Back in the station, I checked the inventory list. We don't even stock those models anymore. Haven't since 2008. But I found something else. An incident report from 2006. Patient left unattended in 6E03. Wheelchair found overturned. Fatality confirmed. Case sealed per administration. No name, no photo, no follow-up. Just a warning scrawled at the bottom. Don't assign room 6E03 after dusk. The next few nights were quiet. Then I saw Mrs. Henders again. She'd been moved to rehab on another floor, but I ran into her in the lobby. She looked at me, dead serious, and said, "Tell him I'm not ready. I said no ride tonight, then turned away. The hairs on my arms stood up. That evening, I went back to 6 East. No new patients, but the door to 6E03 was ajar. Inside, lights off. Chair in the corner, facing the window. I stepped in, and the smell hit me, like copper and old rain. The room was empty, no patient, no linens, but the chair rolled slightly, just enough to make a sound. Squeak. I walked backward out of the room, didn't look away. The door closed behind me with a soft latch. From the hallway, I heard it again, a whisper, barely audible. Next ride's yours. They closed 6 East 2 days later. Officially, it's under renovation. But we don't go there anymore. Even housekeeping avoids it. Because late at night, if you stand near the old stairwell, you'll hear it. Squeak, 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 getting closer. And there's no one in the chair, just the shape of something that used to be human, rolling down the hallway, looking for someone to wheel.
They gave me the standard orientation my first week on nights, where the linens were, which rooms had broken call buttons, the quickest route to ICU from the East Wing. But no one mentioned room B117, not once. And that was odd, because I found it on my 3rd night, right after we admitted a John Doe. No name, no ID, no family. He was maybe late 60s, brought in by paramedics after collapsing at a church vigil. Stable vitals, but completely unresponsive. Not comatose, just quiet, like his mind had turned inward and locked the door. They wanted to keep him for observation, but the beds were full. I was told to find somewhere, anywhere, to keep him for the night. I passed by the usual holding rooms, all occupied. I turned the corner toward the back hallway, and there it was. A plain, unmarked door, metal handle, no signage, just B17 stamped into the top right corner in faded ink. I had never seen it before, not on any floor plan, not during training. But the door opened easily. The room inside was clean, sterile even. White walls, single bed with restraints folded neatly at the corners. Monitor plugged in but powered off. And the lights didn't flicker, which in that part of the hospital was a miracle. So I wheeled John Doe inside, tucked him in, monitored him for a few minutes. He didn't move, didn't blink. I noted his placement and closed the door behind me. And that should have been the end of it. The next night, I went to check on him. Room B17 was gone. I turned down the same hallway, counted the same steps, same scuff marks on the floor, but between B16 and B18, just blank wall. I ran my fingers along the paint. It felt warm, not like body heat, like sunlight trapped inside concrete. I backed away, checked again, nothing. When I returned to the nurse's station, I asked the charge nurse where we'd moved the John Doe. She frowned. "We never admitted anyone by that description. You sure you didn't mislabel a room?" I opened the file I'd started the night before. Empty. Just my name and timestamp. No patient chart. I checked the admission logs. No mention of anyone from a vigil. No ambulance report. No vitals. No entry. It was like he'd never existed. For the next week, I avoided that corridor.
until one night, 10 days later, a new patient arrived. Psych intake, middle-aged woman, severe disassociation. Said she couldn't remember how she got to the hospital, but what she kept repeating disturbed me. I was in a room that didn't exist. I saw someone sleeping in it, but he wasn't asleep. She had drawn something on her intake sheet: a bed, a window, a door with B17 written in shaky cursive. My hands went cold. I asked if she'd been in the East Wing.
She shook her head. It was underground, but it didn't feel like a basement. It felt like memory, like I'd been there before. That phrase stuck with me. I started digging. Old records, obsolete floor plans, maintenance logs from years prior, and I found one, tucked into an archived binder from 1991, a schematic of the hospital's expansion plans. There it was, room B17. It had originally been built as an isolation room, but during testing, the staff reported electrical anomalies. Intercoms picking up voices when the system was off. Shadows moving independently of light sources. One report even claimed the room reflected things it shouldn't. The room had been sealed, or at least it was supposed to be. I went back, late, alone, and this time the door was there, just like that. B17. Same faded number, same silence behind it. I opened it. Inside was the same man, John Doe, lying on the bed, eyes closed, breathing steady. His hands were folded over his stomach. On top of them, a note, written in my own handwriting. You brought him here. Now you have to listen. I stepped backward, heart pounding. The man's eyes opened, not slowly, not groggily, just open, alert. He stared at the ceiling and spoke in my voice. He's still watching. You should never have opened the door. I left, didn't log anything, didn't clock out, drove home in silence. I don't know if room B17 exists right now. Sometimes I think I imagined it all. Other times I wake up at 3:13 a.m. and swear I hear breathing behind my closet door. No one at the hospital talks about it. I asked the janitor once if he ever saw an extra room down the east corridor. He looked at me for a long time and said, "There's a space between walls on that side. No one builds like that anymore. Too narrow to stand in, too wide to ignore." I asked if he'd ever gone in. He said, "I never go where the rooms forget their numbers." Sometimes, the quietest moments leave the loudest echoes. Hospitals at night aren't just empty, they remember. And sometimes they call out. If any of these stories stayed with you, you're not alone. Some things are meant to be remembered, even if we wish we could forget. Thank you for listening to these memories. If you want more real stories like this from the people who lived them, subscribe to Nightmare Echoes. We whisper the things most people are too afraid to say. Until next time, don't ignore the sound behind the silence. It may be someone trying to come back.